All right, we are on the mic. I don't even know. Is that a term like in the production world? I made
feel
that
like
up.
there's a different preposition for it, but I can't put a finger
Probably.
on it right now.
Yeah. Well, I like it, so I say it all the time. So, thanks for coming on. I know we scheduled this a while ago, and I'm excited to talk about the world of comedy. And people think I'm funny, but I don't think I'm funny. I think I'm a goofy kind of person. I could never stand up and like do a set. And you have to be a good writer, right? To really do comedy. It's not just like getting up and doing it off the top of your head. So
Absolutely.
yeah. Okay, good. So why don't we, before we get into all the comedy stuff, why don't you tell me about your background, where you went to school, and we'll move up to how you kind of got into comedy. And then like we were talking about off the mic, like, when does comedy become a business when you want to be successful at it and it's a career and so forth, and how you do it. So does that make all sense?
Certainly.
Okay, let's do it.
So, for my background, I had always been into performing, even when I was as long as I could remember, even before I had a stage to do so. I'd just sing songs to family and friends.
Right.
Um, I overshared in kindergarten when we were all trying to, like, we had our little time in our boxes and wanted to show off to the class what we could do. So I sang See You in September in front of my class.
Okay.
And my teacher loved it. Other teachers, visiting teachers, would come into the classroom just to see me sing See You in September to them. I sang
Okay.
it at our kindergarten promotion on stage in front of everyone. So I was always a little show off.
And where was this? Where did you grow up?
In Brick Township,
Oh,
so
okay. New
down the
Jersey.
shore.
Yeah.
Um,
Ocean
and
County, right? Brick is Ocean
yes,
County.
yes.
Got it.
So in doing that, I just always loved performing for people. And I got into stand up along the way because I realized I liked making people laugh and I
Mhm.
could combine that with performing. And
So you were always doing like theater in school and drama club and all
oh,
that
yeah.
stuff? Yeah.
And most of my teachers and directors of school plays and everyone, bless them, knew that I had a penchant for comedy. So whenever they cast me, they were nice enough to try to cast me in roles that allowed me to have put my comedic timing to use.
Good. Okay.
So when I went off to college, I went to Rutgers
Okay.
and went for journalism and media studies.
That
In
makes sense.
Yeah, and in my mind, I was in it more for the media studies side of it than the journalism side. I was looking at the types of careers that people had with that major, and a lot of them went into things like television production and film and whatnot, and that side of entertainment. And I thought I'd be able to carve that kind of a path for myself. I'd go to New York City, start in an entry level position, work my way up the ladder. Also,
Right.
being in New York, so many entertainment opportunities and performing opportunities.
So
So I
like
just
editing, writing, maybe directing, all that type of stuff.
exactly, exactly.
Behind the camera type of things.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I figured I'd go in that direction and see where life took me.
Okay.
And it also helped that being on the New Brunswick campus, the Stress Factory was right down the street. So I always had a place to flex my stand up comedy
Yeah, I've
muscle.
been there a couple of times. What's the owner's name? Gary something?
Vinny,
Vinny, right.
Vinny
Vinny.
Brand.
Vinny Brand, right. Yeah, I met him.
Yeah.
I'm sure he's
And
struggling during this whole time. It's crazy.
I can't imagine what everyone else is going through, especially people that own comedy clubs. Like someone like me that brings the show to you, I don't have the overhead of a building,
Right.
electricity, things like that. But for a comedy club, goodness gracious.
Yeah. He's not filling seats and taking tickets. How does he? Yeah.
Yeah.
Craziness. Okay. Another show. So
But
you we were at Rutgers. You went to Rutgers.
yeah, so I was able to work through my major. I was able to also keep up with doing stand up. And it was nice to finally be on the stand up side, at least, in an environment where I started running into other comedians on a regular basis. I did the open mic there every Wednesday night that I could make it.
Right.
And
You were like part of the community now. You're part of the business.
yeah, more or less. And just getting to know other people in the business, it really taught me. It was my first experience learning the art of networking
Right.
because you'd get to know the other comedians there. One comedian that I met there ran his own comedy show at another bar a couple doors down the street, and he also got me involved in there was a comedy subsection of Yahoo groups where they posted other available shows. And so I started looking at that as well.
Right. Because they're not
And
going to find you. You got to find the opportunities, right?
exactly. So just getting to know people, getting to know who does what, and making those connections, forging those relationships, and finding opportunities that come from them. And that's also the business world as well, going to networking
Of
events.
course. Yeah.
So,
Business development is what it is, right? If you're a performer of any kind or you need opportunities to perform. So do you remember the first time that you got behind a microphone? It was all written out, you're prepared, or you just like, I'm just going to do this, or
oh, it was very prepared. So the first time I had gotten behind an actual microphone, I had already performed my stand-up routine several times, just not on that public a forum.
right.
The first time that I was interested and put together my own stand-up routine was when I was looking in the newspaper for auditions, as you did back in the day. And
And in person, when we
yeah,
maybe someday we'll go back to in person.
so I was looking through the newspaper. I saw an advertisement for a first night event, one of those New Year's Eve type of
Oh,
variety
okay.
shows.
Yeah.
And they were looking for all sorts of kind of more esoteric performers, so not the regular like singers. They're like, we're looking for jugglers and ventriloquists and
Right.
fire twirlers and
Knife swallowers. And
yeah, and
yeah.
stand-up comedians. And
Oh, okay. It's
so
nice that you fit in that
yeah,
category.
exactly. Well, I didn't at the time, but I was looking down the list of
You're
the
like,
things
let's
they
see,
were
I don't
looking for.
juggle, I don't swallow fire, I don't swallow knife. Oh, comedian. I'm a comedian.
Yeah, I wasn't at the time, but out of all the options, I was like, that was the one that I could at least pretend to be.
You're very daring. So I don't know. A lot of
Yeah.
kids in college would just do this. I think people have the impression like if you get into stand-up comedy, and I know you do a lot of other things, we're going to talk about that stuff, but I think they think like you go to an open mic night and you just stand up and make things up. But if you want to be successful, just like anything, you really need to prepare.
Yeah. And what a lot of people don't quite grasp, especially when a comedian is at their best, is that with stand up, it is constantly set up punchline, set up punchline, set up punchline. That is how you structure a joke. It's not just, I mean, there are actually, as time has gone on, there are subgenres of comedy that are storytelling specifically. And um, you know, alt comedy and whatever else you want to go in with that. But with classic stand up, you have a setup, you have a punchline, even if it's not as blatantly obvious a setup punchline as why did the chicken cross the road to get to the other side.
Right. You're setting up the audience to laugh, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And some people are like, oh, well, and such just, goes on and tells stories. I'm like, yeah, but he has tags everywhere along the
Structured for a
way.
reason. Yeah.
He
And you
sets up,
probably tested it, right? And practiced it. And
of
timing is
absolutely.
everything. Yeah.
Absolutely. And especially a lot of people like to throw out the example of Robin Williams. And they're like, well, Robin Williams could not have possibly rehearsed beforehand. I would bet he did.
I'm sure he did a lot, or he did a lot of stuff, right? Going on stage, going whatever. He practice.
Yeah. I know a gentleman that I know from church had gone to school with Robin Williams and was telling me stories about him and how he did religiously practice all the time. I'm
Sure.
like, you're preaching to the choir. I knew that. The
Of
people that I
course.
talk to in bars
No,
that
they
are
just think he's this
overzealous.
brilliant guy and he could just go on Johnny Carson and just be funny.
Exactly.
That was a result of years and years of work. But so I think that's interesting. So you found like the first gig. Had you ever written any stand-up at that point?
Oh, no. And so this was actually also prior to college. I
Oh,
was
okay.
15. It was
Oh, okay.
the summer between my freshman and sophomore
Really
year
have
at high
guts.
school.
Yeah, I could never
I
do this when I was 15. I barely raised my hand.
Yeah, I liked making people
Yeah.
laugh. It was a way of getting attention in a good way, but
Yeah.
also not in like the goody two shoes way that I feel
Right.
like
It's
I
more cool.
exactly,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
without being like mean or anything. So
Right. Yeah. Not too mean.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
But you're
I
15 now. So how do you write? Like, how do you write comedy? You're 15 years old. Do you remember?
mm, so I had a couple of jokes about my family.
Right. Of course.
Um and a couple of jokes about my cat. And I think I had a joke about self-checkouts, and that was about it. Um, but so when I had first put it together,
Yeah.
I was making this audition tape for this
Yeah.
event, trying to be
Right.
like, I'm a stand-up comedian. I've never
Yeah.
done it before. And so I made this audition tape. It was me doing my stand-up routine in my living room
Those on video.
on video.
Right.
I
Okay.
invited 3 friends over that evening. They were my audience. My mom was behind the camera, and it went about as well as a 15-year-old doing stand-up for the first time in their living room in front of 3 friends and their mother. So that is to say I did not actually get asked to be on this show.
You
But
did. Oh, you didn't get the job?
oh goodness, no.
Oh, okay.
But I still absolutely loved it though. I loved the idea of writing and coming up with these jokes. I love the idea of performing. And while I didn't really find an opportunity to do so for maybe about a year or two after that, the first time I had actually performed on a stage, it was about a year after that. It was,
So still high school.
yeah, it was
Okay.
my junior year of high school. My church was having a variety talent show.
Okay.
And so I decided that was a good venue for me to try stand up. I was 100% clean at the time for obvious reasons.
Right.
And it was a good opportunity because I had been a part of so the church was connected to the elementary school that I had gone to. And so I had been a part of the school, I had been a part of the church, I'd been a part of the community my entire life. This was a room full of people who knew me very well, wanted me to succeed, and were going to laugh at whatever I had to say, even if it wasn't funny. So it was a very supportive environment for my very first
Right. So as opposed
stand
to
up
some
set.
people are like more nervous in front of the people they know, you felt like, oh, well, these people all have my back. They're not going to
Oh,
like throw tomatoes at me and eggs.
I was very nervous, but in retrospect, I had no reason to be. But I
Yeah.
do very much remember being backstage just freaking out.
Yeah. That's what
But
I would think I would be doing. I just,
oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I
yeah.
had
I
one
mean,
of my
public speaking is one thing. I get to talk whatever I'm talking about, but I mean, you're basically performing. It's all timing and it's all, one joke is like crickets. You're just like, forget everything.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I definitely did the crutch thing where I got up and I was like, "Hey, so this is my first time doing stand up. Can you just clap for me now so before you regret it? And then I'll just go and tell jokes." And, I got my round of applause.
Right. And that's a good way to break the
Got
ice. Right. I mean, it makes you more comfortable and makes them laugh. And
yeah, and it got me the energy and the adrenaline that I needed to keep going.
that was
So,
smart. That was actually very smart. I think comedy is a lot of like momentum, right? Like if I'm sitting in the audience, if you got me laughing a little bit, I'll keep laughing at things, even if they're not as funny. But if
right.
you're not laughing, it's human nature, right? You just like you fall apart. So
Absolutely.
yeah,
And um another thing too is you also feed off the energy of other people in the room too. Um and that's actually part of the reason why if you've ever been to a in-person comedy show at especially at clubs and whatnot, if you ever feel like you're being crunched in like a sardine, that is incredibly intentional
of
because
course.
if you've ever heard the phrase laughter is contagious, it's kind of literal in a sense where
Yeah,
if
definitely.
yeah, if someone's standing, 10 feet away from you and they're laughing very, very hard at a joke that you think is mildly entertaining, that's the best that situation's ever going to get. But
Right.
if that person is shoulder to shoulder with you and you feel them shaking with laughter, you're going to laugh more just because of that.
Yeah, it's vibrational energy that's coming off of them. It's the same thing if it's the opposite of that, right? So
Exactly.
it not only helps the club because they're squeezing more people in, but it helps the comedians because they got a packed room.
Yeah. And then it helps the audience because if,
They have a better
the energy is
experience.
up,
Yeah.
they enjoy the show more. That energy feeds off the comedian. The comedian can feel a lot more comfortable and ultimately do a better job.
Right. Yeah. That's why these like Zoom events, I've been to a couple of Zoom comedy events. I think one that you did too.
Right.
And it's hard because you don't have any of that stuff. What do you sit next to your spouse? If she laughs, you know, so it's very difficult to connect with a room that you're not in.
Yeah, that's why on Zoom shows, we try so hard to encourage people to keep their cameras on, to stay unmuted. A lot of people can't, won't, or don't.
Right.
And, but if you try to put that encouragement out there, at least enough people will do so to be able to carry the energy forward a little bit. I've been lucky on most of the shows that I've been on that I've
People
had that.
participated.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
they have to agree to be actively participating. I did one where there was just a chat, but then the one comedian who was good and the other one who wasn't so good, the good one kind of followed the chat and made comments and was like, whatever, and made it funny because you couldn't really follow the chat. You were too busy looking at that
right,
person.
right,
But
right.
it's a tough. I love live comedy. It's it's crazy to going back to it. So okay, so you're back in high school. You're at the church. You didn't tell a dirty joke, so that's good. And did it like bit you? I mean, at that point, you're like, oh, I definitely love doing this. Not that
Oh,
it's the only thing you're doing, but
yeah, absolutely. And it was kind of a gradual thing because I always liked doing it. I wasn't sure if I was going to actually make a career out of it. I just knew I didn't want to stop doing it in some capacity.
right.
And I might take breaks for several weeks at a time, whereas there's some folks on in the comedy world that if you miss a day, what's wrong with you? Like grinding, 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 grinding. They
Oof.
also live much closer to metropolitan areas where they could find an open mic to go to every night. Whereas
Really,
being
like every night of the week, they're jumping on a mic somewhere.
some of them go hard.
Wow.
Especially the closer you live to say like New York City,
Right.
where there's some
Stuff
people
every
do,
night. You can always
yeah.
find something.
And some people will do multiple open mics in a night. Like they'll start at the 4 p.m. one and then go move on
Come
to the 6
back.
p.m.
Yeah.
and just on and on and on.
Yeah.
I've
Oof.
never been that way, but being where I am in not terribly close to any city, it would be difficult for me too.
Right.
So
Plus, you have other pursuits. I mean, you have a production company. You're looking to be on the different side of the business a little bit.
exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So the church doesn't count. So you were in front of so when were you on a stage where there's total strangers in the audience? Maybe you knew a few people, but in a club, you remember?
That would probably have had to been my stress factory days when I started at Rutgers. Because in high school, I did like a couple of other things, like a couple of coffee house open mic nights, or um,
Like local stuff down in Ocean
yeah,
County. Like people
a
knew
variety
you.
show at my high school,
Right, right. People
which
knew
was
you.
similarly met like the church. But by the time I had started doing open mics at the Stress Factory, I mean, any open mic is going to be hit or miss because it's mostly just a comedian performing in front of a bunch of other comedians who, even if they find a joke funny, they're going to look at it from a more analytical standpoint. So they
Right,
might not actually laugh. They might just think, oh, that was pretty good.
right.
Um,
And right, they still think it's funny, but they don't laugh because it's a business.
exactly.
They're
So,
professionals.
but at that point, I had had enough positive experiences to go off that even if I bit it on stage, I would know
Yeah, it
this
wasn't
isn't
like
the
your
only,
first time. This is
yeah,
never going to work. Yeah, type
it's
of thing.
not the only outcome.
Right. Are college crowds difficult, more difficult than, or they're easier?
I feel like
I'm thinking they're all drunk. So
as a college student, it was probably easier to perform in front of a college crowd. I don't know if I could pass judgment on them right now.
yeah, it's hard to relate to them. Maybe.
I mean, sometimes I'll go back and do a show here and there in New Brunswick, and I still have a couple of Rutgers jokes in my repertoire that I could pull back up
Yeah,
and
you
still
got
have
to
them be
do that, right?
relevant.
You're in New
Yeah.
Brunswick, right?
Yeah.
So we were talking before about like, is comedy a business or a profession? And you made a really good comment about why it should be a business if you're going to be successful, right?
Right. Because any performer, regardless of what you do, whether it's comedy or acting or, you know, fire spinning or juggling, it's not just you go on a stage, you perform, you get off. Because how do
Right,
you get those performances? You
right,
market yourself, you network with other people, you maintain an online presence. So the people that actually succeed at this are the people that treat themselves as a business when they themselves are the commodity.
right. Well, I mean, you also have money coming in, right? They're going to hopefully someday pay you
Right.
to be funny, and then you get that money coming in. What do you do with that? You got to put that in a bank. You got to pay expenses. You got to pay taxes and all that type of stuff, right? They don't
Exactly.
withhold. A lot of times they're probably just paying cash. So
Exactly.
yeah. Okay. So what did I want to ask you about? Oh, so let's talk about, what you do, like your production company, and how you've been building that business and all that type of stuff. Because it's not just stand-up comedy, right? You're doing all kinds of events now.
Right, right. And being a performer in stand up, I had gotten into the business side of it by just coming to notice that a lot of the shows that I was performing on were being put together by my own peers in the business. And
Got it.
I kind of liked that idea.
Yeah.
The idea of kind of being in charge of things is along with also being able to perform.
Like putting the show together and promoting the show and all it's basically the creative side of it, right? As yeah. Okay.
There's, and even when people ask me, what do you like doing better, performing or putting together shows, I can't pick because
Yeah. It depends on the right.
there's such good points to both sides of it that I wouldn't be able to stop doing one for the other. Um,
Luckily, you don't have to.
exactly. So I had started to, I put a couple of shows together in college, but I didn't start putting ones together regularly until a couple months after I graduated. I had, you know, stopped at a bar with a friend of mine late one night and we're the only two people there. We start chatting with the bartender. I throw out the I'm a comedian
Uh-oh.
brag, what have you.
Right.
And of course he goes, "Oh, you're a comedian. Can you put shows together here?" I'm like, "Yeah,
Sure. Well, you
why
always say
not?
yes, right?
I'll figure
Yeah.
it out."
Right.
So I was putting them together and it was on Sunday nights at 10 p.m. It was this dive bar on the outskirts of New Brunswick, and it was a free show, but it was still my show, my first show that I still got to
You were
regularly
booking
run.
people to come in.
Exactly.
Got it.
So,
So when you graduated, you didn't go get a job. You were like, okay, mom, I'm not getting a job. I'm going to do stand-up comedy and do this production stuff. She's like, great. I'm glad I paid all this money.
funny you mentioned that. I graduated in 2008, so even if I wanted a job, no
Oh
one
yeah,
wanted me.
perfect. The whole world was
um,
falling apart.
yeah, and it was funny because it was just so funny to me because I was putting my resume out to any place that I would want to have me, and no one's responding back. Meanwhile, I land this again free show, but
Right. Yeah,
a show
non-paying
nonetheless.
job. It's perfect.
Yeah, but I started promoting it, like come to my Sunday night show at this place, and different comedians every week, blah blah blah, and people started reaching out to me going, "Oh, you put together shows? I didn't know that. We just opened a
Ah,
cafe. My brother has a restaurant. This guy down
right.
the street's looking for," and I realized there was a demand for this.
Yeah.
And I was in no place to figure out how to turn it into a full-time business at that time because this was a decision I had just made
Right.
coming
Yeah, it
out
wasn't
of
like you sat down, you wrote a business plan and you said, okay,
exactly.
this is how I'm going to do it.
Exactly.
Right.
So I had um so I switched gears a little bit. So instead of looking for a job in my field, I'm like, let me just get any job that frees up my nights,
Right. So
maybe
you
has a
can book
good
events and you can build that
exactly.
side of your business.
Yeah. If it gives me a paycheck, frees up my nights, and
Right.
maybe has a good benefits package because, everyone needs health insurance.
Well, there's your business plan. So your business plan was here we get revenue by working
Yeah.
during the day to support the business that we want to run at night.
Yeah.
You already knew the marketing side of it. You were doing that, right? Growing that stuff. I can't imagine the finances were too complicated, but maybe with the events.
Yeah. And I just kind of needed to figure out the logistics. Like, I didn't know the first thing about even starting a business. I had to go to the basics of what's an LLC, what's a self
Right.
proprietor,
You didn't
and
even have a
just
name at that point, right?
no.
Right.
So I had to go through from the very beginning trying to figure out how to make that happen.
Yes. Turn
And
it into an entity of some sort, right? A lot of people don't do that. They just keep winging it and they're taking money in. They're not following any kind of rules. And next thing you know, they get a tax bill or something like that. They're like, what?
yeah,
Yeah.
and it was my mother who actually kind of pushed me into turning it into a business, mainly because one of the shows that I had acquired shortly after I'd started running the bar show was one that said, feel free to charge admission at the door and you can keep that. We'll make money off food and drinks.
You're like,
And
oh, you can make money doing this?
yeah, and it wasn't bringing me in a lot by any stretch of the matter, but the fact that it was bringing me any at all, my mom's like, you need to start a business so that the tax man doesn't come after you.
Right, that's
So
what she said. That's
more or
funny.
less, and in
Yeah.
that voice too.
Mom's a comedian too. Yeah.
So and not for nothing, but it was a very smart idea. So
Well, you have
I thank her.
liability issues, right? I mean, you had to get
Exactly.
insurance, I guess, if you're putting these events on, right? I mean, who thinks about all this stuff?
Exactly. So no, that was a smart idea. I thank her for that because that did put me in the right direction with this.
And
And
that was the name,
yeah,
Ninja,
Ginger
Ginger, because you're a
Ninja.
redhead.
Yes.
Where's the ninja fit in?
It so Ginger Ninja was like a nickname inside joke thing from years and years ago. And I actually learned through maybe a couple years ago that, and I don't know if it's actually true because, I just read it on the internet once,
Right.
but
That
I
makes it true.
heard that Ginger Ninja is a slang term for a redhead in Australia.
Oh,
Again, I don't
okay.
know. I did not fact check that little tidbit, but I could see that being a true thing.
Why?
I don't know. It just seems like a very
Sounds good,
Australian
right?
thing to do.
The ninja. I thought you were going to tell me it's a word for somebody in Japan. That's Australia. Is that where ninjas come from? Australia?
I don't. It seems like a very cheeky nickname for someone, and I feel like that.
So now you have to do like one of those 23andMe things or ancestry.com and find out if you have any, Australian anywhere in your tree, even the remotest piece,
Yeah,
to figure that out, or develop an accent.
I am terrible at accents.
Yeah, I'm definitely not. So that's not part of your comedy, doing accents or impressions.
No, no.
Yeah. Okay, this is great though. So you formed the company. It doesn't matter what the reason is. Your mom pushed you to do it. So that's great. You had insurance now. You're doing these events, and take me along. So, because you still have a day job and you do this at night or no?
So that was where I was at. So for about 6 years, I kind of did
Okay,
it that way
that's
because
14 roughly, right? 2014, 2015, something like that.
yeah, to 2000, right to 2015. So
Okay.
um in doing that, I guess what happened was, so I was doing a lot of the smaller scale type of venues, coffee shops, bars, restaurants, that sort of thing,
Right.
and a lot of the mom and pop places that didn't really have much of a budget of their own. So I wasn't about to ask them for any unreasonable amounts of money to have a budget to put together a show. So a lot of these
Right.
were like the door deals of, oh, I'll charge money at the door
Maybe you'll make a
and
little bit
make do
offset your
there.
expenses, right?
Yeah, and
Were the performers doing it for free too because they just wanted to get their name out there, or no?
no, I would split whatever. I would take whatever we brought in at the door and kind of
Give them
um
half and yeah.
yeah, and as such, the shows that I was putting together couldn't be guaranteed to be a professional show because comics that rely on that, comics where shows are their bread and butter every week, aren't going to want to come down to do a show where the pay is maybe gas money if we bring in enough people.
Right.
So, I still tried to keep the talent as good as I could make it, but um when the onus is also on you to bring people in the door, it gets a little tricky because then sometimes you'll pick a couple of comics that um, have the talent to keep the show moving along, and then one comic that might be new, but new means their friends and family haven't gotten sick of them yet, so they bring a small army into the show, so you get the audience in, you know?
Right. So it's kind of a little bit of a technique to
Yeah,
fill it
and
up.
so I was doing shows like that for about 3 years straight, just because, not even because I tried to market myself, just because work kept falling into my lap.
People
Oh, I
just
heard
kept
you.
asking you.
Yeah, I heard you did the show over here. I have a coffee house. Come here. And when my last venue that I had at the time cut ties with me, um, it was a restaurant that they were about to shut down and pursue other opportunities closer to them. I went, well, I could actually take it upon myself to chase down the next coffee house, or I could figure out how to actually step up.
Like do
And
bigger venues or do bigger
exactly,
events.
exactly.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going
So
to do it, it's probably the same effort, right? And you make less money, you might as well. It's got to be a point where it's not really much more effort than doing the one at the coffee shop. You're not doing it for
Exactly.
MetLife Stadium. That obviously would be a bigger deal.
Right. So I had, I would say take a break, but I was still active in that I wasn't actively pursuing shows or actively doing shows. But if you came to me and said, Molly, we need the show, you'd still get a show.
Yeah, you would
But
do it.
I was otherwise kind of on the DL to figure out how to re-strategize and make this work better. And so that took a couple years longer than I planned just because I got distracted along the way. That was around the time that I discovered voiceover work
Oh,
and
okay.
a couple of other projects here and there. And so then finally, I had enough of my stuff together that in early 2015, I had quit the day job and started doing this full time. And at that point, I had been focused mostly on fundraisers.
Uh-huh.
It was
Like charitable things, charitable events.
yeah, it was easy to find nonprofits. It's
Yeah, they're always
they're
looking for people to events to bring their donors in, right?
exactly, and the lists of them are a little bit easier to find and sort out online as far as like registries and things like that go than it is to do the equivalent with like corporate events or potential
Right.
private
Yeah, you
parties.
can
So
identify the marketplace pretty easily. They don't hide, and you got to work your way into the corporation. It's easy to find the person who either runs events for the charity or runs the entire charity. They're looking
precisely,
for ways to raise money. Sure.
precisely.
Yeah.
So I had started doing that and with the intention of then expanding to doing just as many corporate shows or figuring out how to do just as many private events. And I realized that I really liked working the nonprofits and the fundraisers to the point where when it came time for me to figure out how to expand, I figured I'd go geographically instead of trying to
Stick with the charities. Stick with the
exactly.
nonprofit route.
Exactly. I mean, I will still do a show for any occasion and have done a number of corporate
No,
shows,
but
have
your
done
marketing focus, the business development is in the nonprofit
exactly.
arena. Yeah.
Exactly.
So okay, so finding those people are easy. How do you find these comedians? I mean, besides people that are well known.
The comedians were also pretty easy with me as well because just being a performer,
You're
I
tied in.
have a network of comics that I've just amassed from my own work in the business.
And you could just put it out and say, listen, I have an event on this date and I need, and then people would call you.
Exactly. Um, Usually I kind of have some people in mind that I would want to book on an event, so I'll just reach out to them directly. But
Oh, got it.
push come
Makes
to
sense.
shove, if I went on Facebook right now and said, "Hey, I need 3 comedians for a show,"
Yeah, everyone's looking
I
for work,
would
right?
have 500 messages.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of people out there looking to do just do work, right? Especially
Exactly.
nowadays. Oh God. Yeah. Oh, there's an event I could go to without a mask. Um, so what was my question? I know what my question was. Clearly, just like any industry, right? There's things that people shouldn't be doing and people should be doing, right? So there's plenty of businesses that people go into, and since this is a business podcast, and they should evaluate, should I be doing this or not? And they don't. They don't have the skills for it. They don't have the background for it. They don't have the contacts for it, right? So I'm sure there's plenty of people that are like, I could be a stand-up comedian, right? So we know that's not true. So what do you, and this is your opinion, this is an opinion question, right?
Okay.
What is your opinion and your thoughts about, okay, how do I evaluate whether my family thinks I'm funny, right? That's how it always starts, right? You're very funny. How do you evaluate whether that's a good thing or bad thing, or it's right for you or not right for you in the business?
I don't think you can make a flash evaluation just based off that. If there's a person who a lot of folks think are fun, like if someone's saying, like, my family thinks I'm funny,
Give it
it
a
could go
try.
either way. It could go, exactly, give it a try, because it could mean that they're just very good in a tight context where they can make very family centric.
Can you hear me? I can't hear you all of a sudden. Uh-oh. Are you back?
Can you hear me?
Yep. Now, some Zoom glitch.
Yeah.
It says my internet's unstable. That's great. Okay. I'm sorry. You were saying.
So,
Yeah, maybe you're funny around the dinner table. That doesn't mean you should be on a stage behind a mic.
yeah, but at the same time, it could also mean maybe this person does have the ability to pick up on things around them, or has that maybe observational talent. Um,
In terms of timing, but you still have to be, I think, a good writer. I mean, you have to,
exactly.
right? I mean, people can't write. It's hard to just, you can't wing it. You got
Yeah.
to write
And
good jokes.
so, exactly. So, for someone to come up and say, "Oh, my family thinks I'm funny," you can't really tell whether or not they'd be good at it until they try.
Right.
It's like coming up and saying, "Am I a good golfer? Have you ever sold a club?"
Yeah,
No.
right.
Could I be a good golfer?
With practice.
Yeah.
Yeah, an okay golfer. Okay. So if somebody's interested in it, they really have to like write some jokes, test them out, get in front of a mic, and then either flop or, you know, see, I just think the whole thing would be too stressful for me. I would just be like, oh my God.
Yeah. Especially because in order to truly give stand up a try, you have to actually get up in front of a public audience. It's not, I mean, garage bands have the luxury of being able to practice in a garage. Comedians have to practice in front of strangers.
Right.
You can't just tell your jokes in front of a mirror and say, I'm good to go, because you don't, you need the reaction, you need the energy to figure out what's working, what's not.
Right. And even your friends they're not gonna be that honest.
Most of the time now.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. All right. So if somebody's looking to get started, that's what they should do. I mean, I don't know. You can't find an open mic right now, right? So it's kind of hard time to do comedy.
Yeah, I'm sure that there are some out there. I have not actively looked. I know a lot of people are trying to had been trying to make a lot of things happen on Zoom. I know that there are also a lot of, or at least more than there were before, socially distanced outdoor events. I
Right now it's
know
getting warmer, right? Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. Is the Stress Factory doing things outside?
I have no idea.
Yeah. I used to get mailings from them. I get nothing now. So I was trying to get Vinny to come on my show. I was chasing him and chasing him. He said, yes, absolutely. And then, of course, the pandemic hit and the whole world went into
Right,
tailspin. So
right.
I haven't been able to get him on. And I've been able to get him on email, let alone come on the show. So if you know him, connect me with him. Maybe I can get him on to come on the show.
I might be able to. He tells a good story too. A friend of mine was putting a documentary together on comedy and was actually able to get him for an interview. So
Yeah, let me know.
I'll ask around.
So tell me about your future plans. Like, what are you doing with the company? Where's it going? Where do you see things going, especially in the light of what's happened?
So I don't know if I'm making too many drastic changes other than to keep doing what I'm doing, just do more of it. I think that the addition of this virtual aspect is a blessing in some ways, because there are some folks that I know that their biggest concern when it comes to putting their show together is having to turn people away because they sell out. If you can turn, with the addition of a virtual aspect, you can turn it
Oh,
into a
yeah.
hybrid event.
Right.
You sell out the show, that doesn't matter because now you can sell tickets to people who want to stream the show. And then there's no limit to the people you can bring into the door, the amount of money you can make.
Right. And if the comedian's in front of a live audience, it probably streams better. I mean, basically, it's like having a TV network, right?
Exactly.
Private TV network. Yeah, that makes sense. And then I guess I've seen them use Venmo and stuff for tipping the comedian, and people can, do a virtual, just throw
Right.
money on Venmo.
Yeah. And aside from that, one of the side projects that I've been working on in the pandemic that I've been thinking about for about 3 years and just kept putting off for whatever reason, um, trying to also put a supplementary online course together.
Yeah.
Because in
For what?
addition,
For production people or for comedians?
for event management
Yeah.
for stand-up comedy in the context of stand-up comedy shows, because
Yeah.
a big part of what I do, in addition to actually putting the show together, is helping people through the process. What's the best time of year to put a show together? How do we promote? What's the best way to set up a room? Things like that.
Yeah, the whole
So
planning thing.
exactly.
Right.
So I'm moving at a snail's pace at it. So I'm probably gonna be dropping sections in like George R. R. Martin periods of time where I wait for, 10 years before the next one comes out.
Well, it's actually a good time, right? There's no events now, right? I
Right,
mean,
right.
charities aren't doing anything in person yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I got a few things that I do a local thing where I go and then we just start having a dinner, but they can only have like 12 people at the dinner. We used to have 40. So
Yeah.
you got to sign up and then it fills up, you can't go, So yeah, the charities are not rushing to, and they got liability too. They don't want to bring all the donors back and have issues. So
Right, right.
yeah, you gotta be
But
vaccinated.
yeah, at this point, so that's the course is almost ready to at least launch the free trial portion of it. It's in kind of a beta testing right now, but hopefully I'll have that ready to go pretty soon.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. It'll be an online course, right?
Right.
Very good. All right. So, Molly, I appreciate you spending all the time with me. And what's the best way for people to interact with you? I don't know, get on your mailing list so they can hear about the course, find your shows. What's the best way to do that?
So my website is
Okay.
gingerninjacomedy.com.
Easy to remember. We'll put in the show
Exactly.
notes anyway.
There are ways that you can sign up for the mailing list there. I also have a link to my Facebook page there, but if you'd rather not go through my website, you can find me at Ginger Ninja Productions. The whole long name is Ginger Ninja Productions Comedy and Entertainment, but you type in Ginger Ninja Productions, you'll find me.
Okay. But the website's Ginger Ninja Comedy.
Correct.
Got it. Okay, good. And I thank you. Any last thoughts, words of wisdom, advice for people who are listening?
Nothing poignant.
You don't have a parting joke.
I Man, I should have prepared one.
Yeah,
So,
like three bears, a rabbi, and a priest walk into a bar or something like that.
my parting words are always prepare parting words.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. Well, I appreciate it very much. And I'm sure I'll see you at our next networking event. So
I
thank you
look
very
forward
much,
to it.
Molly. I
Thank you,
appreciate it.
Mitch.
Great.